Hello and welcome to Thoughts in the Green Room with your host, Geoff Mays. This week's topic, nerves. Now, very recently, I had the fortune of spending time on a set and working on the largest project that I've personally ever worked on. In terms of the scope of the project, I was very fortunate. It was much larger production in terms of funding, in terms of studio production. Everything about it was larger. And also in terms of larger, it was the most time that I've ever been on set. I was on set for a total of 9 days, which blew my mind to be that busy. One of the side effects of being that busy, of course, was because of where I was shooting, when I was shooting, and the schedule associated to get those 9 days in, I wasn't very available for auditions, and as a result, I essentially went 3 weeks without doing any auditions. This was fine. I was working. I was busy. I was happy. I was excited. I got to be on set every day and do fun things that I hadn't done before. Everything was wonderful. We get to my final day on set, and we call wrap, and there's a little clapping because I'm wrapped on my final day, and it's a long day, and we get me out of makeup, and we get me into a car, and we're driving home from location. And I'm sitting there, and I'm thinking to myself, wow, I am really tired. And tomorrow I don't need to come back to the real, quote-unquote, real world. And I started to panic. I started to freak out inside. I'm like, oh my God, what if I never work again? I haven't auditioned in like 3 solid weeks. What happens tomorrow if all I've got is my day job? And I was losing my skull inside. I took a couple deep breaths, kept freaking out, took a couple more deep breaths, and started trying to figure out why I was freaking out. And the first thing I realized was that I was nervous. I was nervous that I'd never act again. I was nervous that because I'd spent 3 weeks away, there'd be no auditions for me. I was nervous that maybe I'd get an audition, but it would take 4 or 5 months. You get where I was going. Nerves were taking over. I was pretty shook up for most of the car ride, and I finally came home and was tired, late night, long day on set, all was well, crawled into bed, got up the next morning, took a deep breath. Got up a little bit extra early, actually. I was fortunate. It gave me time to do some reflection. And this is when I started to realize that my nerves were a product of fear, obviously. But in order to overcome that product of fear, I also need to go back to what I said in episode 108. Which is relax. This topic of nerves and this topic of relax both tie together. They are symbiotic. They have a symbiotic relationship. If you're able to relax and trust, the nerves tend to dissipate. If your nerves increase and those become the dominant, then your ability to relax and trust dissipates. Back and forth, back and forth. As I realized this symbiotic relationship, I realized that I needed to breathe more, do some of the things that I do to calm myself down, and start to overcome the nerves by simply trusting. I've been fortunate there's been work. I've been fortunate I've been booking work. I was fortunate I'd been on set for a long time, and the reality is that no matter what we do, there will always be more work. There will always be another something. And this fear and nervousness that I experienced is something that I realized actors regularly experience. But it doesn't make it individual or unique to actors. The fear and nerves that we face are universal. Have you ever lost a job and wondered what you're going to do next? Maybe you've just quit a job because you want to move on to your next thing. But that space in time from the day you hand in your resignation until the next thing starts over. Maybe it's a new car. Your old car is on its last legs. You know you've got to get rid of the new car, get rid of the old car to get a new car, but there's a huge outlay of money. So you put the old car to rest. You're in a rental car. Those nerves of will you find the right car for the right cost. So this experience, my experience of nervousness at the end of a something, moving forward into a new thing, I realized is universal. This idea where I get to take a deep breath and relax and trust that the next thing is coming is universal. Do you, my viewers, have the ability to breathe, to sink into what's next, to trust that it's coming? And here's the thing. No matter what we do, there will always be a next thing. For an actor, there's always other gigs. It may take some time before you get that audition, before you book. It may be the next day. But there will always be more acting. For those who aren't actors, writers, other artists, singers, songwriters, poets, you finish a piece. It may take a little bit for the inspiration to come for the next wave, but there will always be more art. For those who aren't in the arts, there's always another job. There's always a new home, a new fill in the blank. The challenge is breathing through it and accepting that it will come to you. And having this experience so viscerally, it occurred to me that actors experience this all the time. We regularly book, and when's our next gig? We do an audition. When's our next audition? We're facing this cycle more frequently than others. And in the fact that I face it more frequently than others, I realized I really had to do something to get over it. And for me, the process turned out to be quite simple. Some breathing exercises, a little bit of meditation. That was about it. And most importantly, trust in whatever you believe in, that it's going to come. Trust in myself that I have the talent and the skill set to move forward. So I turn to you, my viewers, and I ask you first to think about those times when you come to a conclusion on something and what you face before you move forward. First, identify that. The second thing that I challenge you in doing this week is taking a look at that space where the nerves or the fear or the anxiety, the trepidation, whatever you want to call it, where that sets in. How do you manage it? What process do you have? And what I'm getting at is, if you recognize that it is a product and that there is something that will always come forward, you can make conscious choices to overcome that and breathe through that space, so life is that much easier. So with that said, I bring it back to conclude the challenges. Identify when you get nervous. Identify how long you sit in that space. And take a look at challenging yourself to come up with a process to overcome it, so that you can trust more, relax more, and move on to the next big thing quicker and easier. Those are your thoughts from the green room. I'm your host, Geoff Mays, and I'll see you in just a few weeks.